Well, hello and welcome to another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop. And we're having a workshop catch-up this time round. We're here looking at this, first of all. In the last video, I talked about the Lamborghini 350 GT, the 6th ever production Lamborghini, which we've had the pleasure of doing a lot of restoration work on. For various reasons, it had a 4-litre engine installed in 1966 to replace the 3.5-litre, hence 350, engine that they came out with. And consequently, the 350 engine was put to one side, and the original bare block, the bare heart of the engine, came with the car. And I in a rather cavalier moment, said to the owner, why don't we make a built-up engine out of the original engine? And that's easier said than done, because they only made 123 350 GTs. So to find an engine 50, 60 years later is not easy. But anyway, we did it. Found a 350 GT engine with the help of my good friend and Lamborghini historian, Olivier Nameche, which I keep mentioning, but he is incredibly talented and knowledgeable on early Lamborghinis, and not so early ones for that matter. And what we've done is we've actually built an engine up here, and James is actually making this display stand for it. And I'm going to be going overseas to hand this and the 350 GT and another car that we've been working on over to the owner, and he's going to take delivery. So we're going to make a nice plaque up, etc. One of the interesting challenges of this project is that the carburettors, these are almost identical to the type that Ferruccio Lamborghini first used when he invited the press to come to the factory at Sant'Agata Bolognese, which was only half finished in 1963, 1964. And he had one of his V12s, his very first engines, running on a test bench for the press to see, and there's a famous photograph. And the engine setup is almost identical to this, but it's almost impossible to replicate it because these carburettors are just not obtainable. And old carburettors for engines now, particularly sort of concours winning cars like some of the most prestigious concours events around the world, to get original carburettors from the 1950s and 60s is almost impossible. But we've managed to source a set of 6 twin-choke carbs, just about identical to the ones that were originally put on this engine. And then the production engines, the inlet ports spilled out this way, and the carburettors were horizontal, called Weber DCOEs, to keep the bonnet or hood line really low, because it would have looked like some sort of dragster with these carburettors on, because they wouldn't have fitted under the bonnet. But obviously, by the time the engine was productionized, they went to the horizontal carburettors, but this we are making into a replica of the pre-production engine. And we can sort of get away with it because being engine number 9 of the production cars, Olivier has done some research into this, and he tells me that they had approximately a maximum of 20 pre-production V12s that they ran to make sure they worked properly and iron out any bugs. So this engine, with a pretty certain degree of certainty, is within the first 30 Lamborghini car engines ever built. So it's a nice piece of history. We're making it as lovely as we can for the owner to display next to the car, and I'm very happy with the results. James is making a really nice job of it. Les and Corey have been working on the engine itself. It's not far off now. We just need to do a little bit of fine tuning with some bolts and things like that to just clean those up. But a nice piece of Lamborghini history and a great privilege to sort that out. So we'll go and have a look at something else now. Well, something else that James has been doing, we seem to be featuring James a lot in this episode, is this particular thing here. This is the Ferrari 250 GT Pininfarina Coupe that was Ferruccio Lamborghini's original car that started the whole Ferrari versus Lamborghini story. And we'll be featuring this in part 2 of the video series fairly shortly, because I've got some more information and made some more discoveries around the really, really interesting history of how this rivalry between the two of them came about, and it all hinges on this car. But trim-wise, it was quite incomplete, I would say. And what James has done is he's actually fabricated this whole grille from sheet alloy and sheet steel. And it was made by Pininfarina originally. It's made in 4 sections, and he's hand formed the steel round here and then welded it, and he's actually made this sort of egg crate grille exactly as Pininfarina did it. So this is going to go away for chroming. Just a little bit of surface rust on it, but that's nothing because it's been open to the atmosphere. And then he's actually made this lovely fold round here, this return into the bodywork exactly as Pininfarina built it. And this is going away to be plated shortly, but just a lovely piece of work, fantastically satisfying. To hand make that as Pininfarina did originally in the 1950s is just a joy, really. So real result there. If we'd had to get somebody else to make that, I dread to think how much it would have cost. So this took about 3 weeks of James's work, maybe 4, but the results are spectacular. Right, let's move on to something else. Well, here's another project that obviously came in for a headlight bulb to be changed. That was a joke. And it's a total restoration on a E-Type Jaguar, a Series 2 original right-hand drive car, which actually is a surprisingly rare car. The funny thing about cars like this is, for people of a certain age, and I very much include myself in that category, the E-Types were sort of ubiquitous. They made mid-60s, 1,000 of them, so they were not a rare car at all. And I will be covering an E-Type in a later video, a sort of dedicated video, because it very much deserves it. But the interesting thing is, in spite of all those numbers that were built, and I remember you could almost, if you were a gambling person, almost win an E-Type and a hand of cards in the pub. They were worth so little, really, when they were rusted out, as a lot of them were. But it's a different world now. And there's not as many left of these cars as you might think. 80% of them went to the States. America was a huge export market for British cars at the time. No wonder the Japanese looked at it so jealously, and VW and Volvo. It was just a massive market for them, and Jaguar rode that wave very well indeed. This was called the XKE in the States. A revolutionary car in a lot of ways. But the interesting thing is there's so few of them around now. Because 80% went to the States, that meant less than 20% by the time you take into account other markets, actually ended up in the UK, in the home market. So they made 18,000 of these Series 2s in total, which means about 3,500 right-hand drive cars. But so many of them they had a huge attrition rate because they were worth very little. So a lot of them have rusted away and fallen by the wayside. So the right-hand drive Series 2 E-Type, shockingly enough, I reckon there's probably about 200 of them left in existence. I'm not talking about cars that have come over from the States and been converted to right-hand drive, as a lot of them were, but I'm talking about an original UK-supplied, home market, right-hand drive car. And actually these cars, once people wake up to this, are beginning to fetch a premium. So this car is in for a full restoration, what we call a rotisserie restoration. It's going away to have all its paintwork blasted off, and then we're going to sort of set to and start to restore bits. We've started on some bits already. In fact, the engine is over here. This is the cylinder block, 4.2 litre, 6-cylinder, very long stroke engine, and it's actually in very good condition, this. The deck of the block is going to need skimming, but that's quite normal, actually. The cylinder liners can protrude slightly under here, but all in all, it's in very good shape, and we've told the owner the news that it's eminently usable without massive surgery, and he's absolutely delighted about that, as are we. It's very satisfying to either get a project that's right on the brink and bring it back, or a project that isn't so bad and bring that back too. Either way, as long as we all know what we're doing and we're on the same page, it's a win-win situation. We can look at another car that's been a sort of towards the better end of the scale in terms of condition now, which is well on its way to being finished, and that's the Black Forest Miura, the yellow Miura that was bought by a gentleman in public auction a couple of years ago now, and in spite of the difficulties of supply chain, etc., over the couple of years that have just gone by, etc., we are pretty well on the way to being finished with this car, and it's coming along really well. Let's have a look. Well, this is the Black Forest Miura, as we sort of refer to it, and as it's generally known now, because it was discovered after many years in a garage in the Black Forest in Germany. And Pete's been starting to power things up. You can see the telltale jump leads and battery. We're just building the doors up. There's a particular order that these chrome trims go on. The inside chrome trim goes on first. Then there are some holes through to put the outside chrome trim on. You've got to get the order right, otherwise it will just never happen. So this is really good. Craig's put all the dashboard back in, Pete's wired it all up. We're really sailing on with this one now. I'm very happy with where it's at. And talking of Miuras, we have this one. This is a very interesting car. This is one of the last Miuras built. It's an SV, which means it's got these haunches, which the standard Miura doesn't have, and the wider back tyres. This car was red. It's come from Miami, and it's back to its Verde Miura. It's Miura green, the stunning lime green colour. At the moment, we made the sills silver, but they were gold from the factory. But a lot of people in 1971, 72, 73 that took delivery of their Miura SVs, first job they did before they actually got them delivered to their home or picked them up was to actually change the gold to silver. But this is well on. Craig is beginning to put the interior in, which he's retrimmed, and Pete's beginning to put the wiring together. This again is coming on very well. Miuras tend to have an oil supply problem if they're driven in anger. The oil can splash around in the bottom of the engine, like a lot of cars that generate G-forces did. Nowadays we have dry sumping and things like that where the oil is in a remote tank to stop that happening. This car actually had a dry sump system fitted in the 1970s by a chap called Claudio Zampoli, who was Lamborghini's technical representative for the USA, and he also developed a car called the Chisetta V16. Be nice to get one of those in one day. And he actually personally developed the dry sump system for this car. So that's been done. We're actually reinstating that and re-engineering it to work properly again. But it's well on the way. The engines are just about built up. There is the engine for this one. I've been having some special camshafts made, which are now done. And we've even had the original headlights replated inside. The headlights are actually from a Fiat 850 Spider, as a lot of Miura parts are, door handles, things like that. So they've been redone. Yeah, again, this is well on the way. We're going to have these two cars finished not too far away from each other, I think. Probably yellow one first, the way we're going. Right, let's have a look at something else. Well, this is another car that we've had in for some work, a Mercedes 230 SL Pagoda. And again, I'll dedicate a whole video to one of these at some point. This is the earliest model, the 2.3, with actually the most tunable engine of the lot. You can really make these go very well indeed, with a bit of extra fettling, etc. But the interesting thing about this is, it used to be Lulu's car, the singer. And her real name, I think, from memory, is Mary MacDonald, which is still her number on the number plate. And this car was bought for her birthday by Maurice Gibb of the Bee Gees, her then husband, in 1966, I think around then, 67. But it's a factory 5-speed manual car, which makes it incredibly unusual. And you just can't get bits for the 5-speed gearbox anymore at all. Anything has to be bespoke made. Fortunately, it's in very good condition. But I'm going to show a bit of a trick now. For any of you who have white lettered or white walled tyres on your classic car, because valeters get very perplexed and very exercised about how to clean white wall or white lettered or white lined tyres. I started my working life, as some of you probably know, as a Rolls-Royce and Bentley workshop, connected with the factory very much so. And I always look at white wall tyres very carefully, because one of the tricks that I was actually taught at the time under the Rolls-Royce sort of teaching scheme was how to clean white wall tyres. And it's very interesting how many people cannot get this right. And in fact, I was watching the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations a few weeks ago, and was mortified to see the Prince and Princess Michael of Kent arriving in a Rolls-Royce Phantom 6 from the Royal Mews, and the white wool tyres were filthy. When I was connected with that would never be tolerated at the Royal Mews. Never in a month of Sundays would a car be allowed to go out looking like that. I was quite shocked. Standards. What can I say? What is the world coming to? So I'm going to use the approved Rolls-Royce method now for cleaning these white wool tyres, and let's see how they come up. I mean, if they come up dreadfully, this isn't going to make me look terribly good, but they should come up all right. Let's give it a shot. Well, the secret weapon, which was used by Rolls-Royce, is the Brillo pad. This is basically it's wire wool with jeweler's rouge in it, and jeweler's rouge is finely ground iron oxide, more commonly known as rust, which is red, pretty obviously. And I'm going to just put this in a bit of water to bring it to life, and then we'll give it a shot on here. Well, it's taking a while. There we are. We can begin to see the white shining through. And these are absolutely filthy. The dirt is really ingrained in them. A lot of elbow grease and quite a few Brillo pads possibly later. This will come up very well. In fact, I don't remember one being quite as bad as this. But the difference is worth it. I happen to like white line tyres on cars, but not everybody does. We can begin to see the difference. When the whole car's done, the result will be really, really good. We'll come back to this. Well, it's so funny how we go through phases of getting similar makes and models in of car at the same time. And while we've got the E-Type in the workshop being restored, this one's come in. It's been very nicely done, actually. It's another Series 2 4.2 E-Type Roadster, and it's got triple Weber carburettors on, non-standard Weber twin-choke DCOEs, very much what I was talking about earlier for the Lamborghini engine. They're horizontal instead of vertical. And this has come in for a tune-up, and I've had my hose pipe and screwdriver out and done the necessary, and it's being collected today. So another very satisfying job, really. Well, another car we've been working on here is this Aston Martin DBS V8. This is a 1969 car. They were featured in the media. They had one or two very good roles when they were new. One was as James Bond's car in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. George Lazenby drove one. And it was actually finished in this beautiful colour of olive green, which is a goldy, greeny metallic, really deep, lustrous colour. The car he drove was actually a 6-cylinder version, which was a stopgap until they finalised this engine. But this engine was always intended to go in the DBS, the V8 engine, but it took longer than expected to develop, so they had to rely on the trusty old straight 6. But anyway, this car is the proper DBS V8. The other car that fell into the same category, by the way, a 6-cylinder DBS made to look like a V8, was the Bahama yellow car that was driven by Roger Moore in the Persuaders when Tony Curtis drove a Ferrari Dino. But this is the real deal. Aston Martin V8, Bosch fuel injection, mechanical fuel injection, and it was really very scruffy, this engine compartment, when it came in, and Alex has been doing a lovely job of refurbishing this, and we've sent bits away to be replated, we've repainted some bits, we've set up the fuel injection system. It's now running really well, and this is a really fantastic job because we get such great job satisfaction from doing something like this, transforming something from what it was into this, and it actually adds significantly to the value of the car as well. If you open the bonnet, open the hood, and boom, you get that. And it was a very powerful car in its day, this. In fact, it was the fastest production four-seater in the world. And it's got these individual throttle bodies, 8 of them, V8, and they're all sort of calibrated very precisely with the linkage with the fuel injection pump in the middle. Same pump as the Mercedes 600, the M100 engine, 6.3. And yeah, this has turned out very, very well. And these are still a fast car, 170 miles an hour, which for a 53-year-old car is moving. So yeah, very happy with this. And this will be ready for some trim work. Craig to make some carpets up for it and things very soon. Well, you'll notice that I'm sporting the Iain Tyrrell Classic Cars shirt. We have been selling them for 2 weeks now, and actually we've had I would quite describe it as a rush on these and the caps. Quite shocking. It's taken the whole team by surprise, this. So thank you for supporting that. And just to say, that concludes another Tyrrell's Classic Workshop video, and we will be back with something else very soon.